So hi guys, it's Paul McClatchie here from Engage People. Our purpose is to align business with talent, and I guess as part of my week, I'm very lucky to interact and meet and chat to some fantastic people. So delighted to be joined by Stephanie Brady, head of HR for Retail inMotion. So we've lots to chat about, Stephanie. But maybe before we jump into all of that, how are things with you? How is all at your end?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough times, Paul. You know, we're predominantly a company that serves the aviation industry. So you can imagine it was quite a sudden hit for us, and it came a little earlier than it did for most other people in the country. But we're getting through. We have a big belief in our future. We've just got to get through the current times at the moment. But yeah, tough times, but I think we're going to get there.
Yeah, very good. And your background, I mean, you're sort of very well established, obviously, with Retail inMotion. I think is it sort of 8 or 9 years or 7 or 8 years at this
I'm coming
point?
up to my 7th year in September, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant stuff. And I guess, I mean, if we were looking, and we'll chat about the current environment. Retail inMotion have always struck me as being a very impressive Irish company. You're obviously, I think how have you seen sort of Ireland and Dublin evolve maybe over recent years in that regard? Was the environment up until say January the most competitive it's been, do you think, or
Yeah,
what were your sort of findings on that front?
yeah, it's mad, really. I mean, you go from fighting, literally fighting for talent, and we're not a multinational, so we're fighting with
Yeah,
multinationals, and we're still in a journey moving out of the entrepreneurial phase into a medium-sized company. And it's probably a story we should tell more, because I think we were trying to attract people who were looking for that cool, trendy startup. And we're kind of in the middle now. We're moving out of that. We don't have these funds, like these enormous funds
yeah,
that we can throw at things that multinationals can. So we're kind of in a funny position. So actually, funnily enough, what we did towards the end of last year, and we were about to implement it when COVID came in, we decided to understand who our perfect employee is. And now by perfect, I don't mean like perfect at their jobs. I mean the kind of person who loves Retail inMotion. And we identified who that is, what they love about Retail inMotion. And our plan for this year was to use that to get more of those people in. So we've got now sort of a profile of that
very
person.
good. Yeah,
We have a
excellent.
list of the things that we do that that person loves, because I suppose we're perfect for some people, we're not
Yeah,
perfect at all for other people. And we've had to learn that the hard way, by hiring people who maybe were looking for something different,
of
and
course.
then were perhaps disappointed in us when they realized, well, that's not you.
Yeah,
So yeah, at the end of the last year, you know, we've been growing so fast and so hard. Sometimes you have to stop to
yeah,
speed up again, you know.
yeah,
So we took a pause at the end of last year,
yeah,
and we did a
yeah.
lot of research, and we came out with some really cool stuff that we were very excited to launch out there into our employer branding, so that we could find the perfect person. And we've gone through our recruitment, you know, our whole process to make sure that it's designed to find that person. And then we also launched a mission, vision, and values at the end of last year, which also we were very excited to share with the world. And that's built into our new process as well. So we're ready to go. When we're back again, we are ready to go with a new
Yeah.
process and a new way to show people what they love about the company.
Brilliant, brilliant,
Yeah.
good for you. And I was going to mention later on, but one of the bits one of the things that impressed me most about sort of Retail inMotion, and obviously we're very lucky to partner with you on the finance side. There was an interview taking place a few months back, and I just noticed that in advance of the interview, the candidate received a very smart PDF. Very, very simple, had all the information. It may have even had a picture of the hiring manager,
Mm-hmm.
all of the details about Retail inMotion, where you guys are based. And I just thought, so we talk a lot about engaged people at the sort of the employer value proposition, and it's not so you have so particularly big multinationals, they have values which are obviously important to have, but then they don't always directly relate to what it's like on the ground in terms of the employee who's coming into the business as to what they're going to experience. And I just thought it was such a simple touch point, but just a great way to start a process, and I think within that sort of, I know it's overused, the phrase the candidate journey, but it
Yeah.
sounds to me like you're really sort of evaluating that to be as competitive as you can be in that space.
Yeah, again, we don't have the funds to compete. So there's much easier ways to compete for us. People love working for Retail inMotion because the humans in Retail inMotion. So we thought, well, what better way than to show people the humans? So for me, I go to work for a manager, not for a company. So we want the candidate to see their manager from the very start. So hence the faces. The faces start on our job interviews, on our job of the weeks. You see the happy, smiley face of the manager. You see them on the helping hand document, which is what you're talking about there. I also believe in what I call a white glove experience for recruitment. So, you know, in a 5-star hotel, everything's anticipatory. So nobody ever has to worry. You never have to go, oh gosh, what do I wear? Well, we'll tell you in the helping hand. Oh, how do I get into the building? Tell you on the helping hand. All those things that make you nervous for an interview, we want to just get out of the way so that you can come in and just be your best version of you. And our interview style as well is very relaxed. We will ask you the tough questions, but not in a way that makes you squirm or feel uncomfortable. You know, I want to find out who you really are, and we can only do that by making you relaxed and, you know, feel like you're at home.
Yeah, of course. And tell me then, so we'll start, because sometimes, and this is particularly within the broader human resources profession, everyone from a staff perspective always looks at, well, you know, what's the company going to do for me? How are you getting on yourself before we talk about, you know, how the business is? How have you adapted? Because this is, I mean, totally as prepared as we all have tried to be, but how have you adapted yourself, and how's life going?
So I suppose remote working was very simple for us. We started remote working probably 2 weeks before, again, because we were in the aviation industry. We have been ahead of the coronavirus, so we were watching what was happening in Asia. We have part of our companies over there, so we could see what was happening. So when the schools closed down, we closed down because we said our employees will be far too stressed to try and figure out coming into the office and school, and we could see people were already getting nervous about catching the virus. So we shut down and said everybody work from home. That was easy for, I'd say, 90% of the company. We have some people that need to be in the office, so we figured that out with them as the time went on. So number one, remote working, easy, made it happen, made it easy for people. We have people all over the world anyway, so it really wasn't a huge thing to get our heads around, maybe for some departments. So then on top of that, we've been doing sort of coaching for the managers as well to try and help them get their heads around things that are causing the problems, like what's coming up for them, what's Corona, you know, amplifying or highlighting, and how can we help you with that. One thing we weren't good at in the past, and we're still working on it. I mean, who's perfect, right? But communication's been tough for us. We really found it hard to get it right. We always communicated too late. Because our business moved so fast, we were always on the back foot with communicating. And a lot of stuff we couldn't communicate because it wasn't signed and sealed. And then by the time it's signed and sealed, everybody knew anyway, you know, so we had a lot of difficulties over the years. And it seems like Corona is helping us figure that out. So again, Zoom, we've had 260 people on Zoom calls. We've done town halls every week or two, depending on the news. We've gotten better at communicating within our teams. Still so far to go, but I think we're seeing what we're capable of and what the technology will help us do, where before we were trying to get everybody in a room, even though we've got people all over the world, you know. So yeah. I think it's helped us figure out what we can do rather than what we can't do. Yeah. And then another thing we put into place, the exec team was very aware of how this was causing a lot of people distress. So we've got people who live on their own in an apartment in Dublin City, and they're lonely and they're fed up. We've got people struggling with the juggling of children. We've obviously got people on layoff and short time who are struggling with money. Yeah. So we put into place some what we call exec chats, because we're very human leaders and we were missing the interaction we get in the office. You know, it's very much an open door style company, so we were missing that. So our CEO did a live cooking Zoom call where he cooked dinner. He gave everybody the recipe beforehand. So that was really popular. There was a quiz night run by our CTO. Our head of commercial gave a tour of Dallas, where he's living right now. So we all took topics that we love, and we just said, just come on a call and have fun with us. And if work stuff comes up, great. But let's just have fun as human beings. So that was quite popular. I was reading stories to children, and that one has that one's growing legs. So I'm doing that every couple of weeks now.
Right. Okay. Very good. Very good.
So it's just using your creativity and thinking, how can we put some fun into this company while people are struggling, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And from a sort of a HR agenda, then, Stephanie, what's your view? So you and I had a very sort of brief chat beforehand, and like the reality is that so some people have a spare room, which is obviously very handy, and they have a laptop,
Yeah.
and everything's set up there. A lot of people could be living at home, and it's just not practical if they're in a role where they're on the phone quite a bit during the day, or someone could be in their bedroom, and because you speak to some people, and it's a bit of a joke at first, I'm not
Mm.
leaving. But because this is obviously, it could be sort of a 4 or 5 month period from a HR perspective, and I'm not going to, I want to be fair to you. I'm not going to put you on the spot because it's obviously a challenge for everyone. But what are the practical considerations do you think for HR professionals at the moment in terms of things they can get right? So you've mentioned some really good pieces there around maybe using Zoom technology to take away some of the formality, and the people maybe get to chat a little bit more. And anything else jumping out you think that you can get right?
Yeah, one thing that we spoke about from the get-go was the children issue, was relax. We're all trying to figure this out.
Yeah,
We're all working at home. Retail Motion, there's a lot of young children, because we're a young company. So lots and lots of people have toddlers, lots and lots of people have the 5, 6, 7-year-olds. And we said from the get-go, we did a town hall the day we shut down the office, and we said, please, we're telling you as a senior team, do not get stressed. If your kid comes on camera, don't worry about it. So we from the get-go, we talked about that. And then in these coaching sessions I was telling you about, I brought up the kid issue. I said, okay, for those of you who don't have kids, how's it going? Is it irritating? Let's talk about it. For those of us who do have kids, how's it going? Is it irritating? How are you feeling? And it was a really interesting chat. The people that don't have kids resoundingly said, it's more of an issue for you guys that have kids than it is for us. We actually love having the kids come on as a bit of a breath of fresh air. We actually really love it. So chill out, like you guys are worrying about nothing, like relax. And the people that did have kids said that they felt the way we've approached the kid situation shows the real values of Retail inMotion, which I feel we've lost the last couple of years where we've grown so fast. I feel like maybe we've not lost our DNA, but haven't talked about the stuff that is our DNA as much. We're getting the opportunity to do that during Corona.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been really interesting just talking about, let's get the topic out there and talk about it.
Yeah.
And also we have an EAP, which we've had from, I think as soon as I joined the company, I said I want an EAP because it's one of the most useful things a HR professional can have. So luckily, even back then when we had no money, they allowed me to do the EAP. And honestly, we talk about it all the time. We've even recreated the EAP marketing material. We've done it in a more RIM style to make it really clear what it's for. And I've been delighted to hear people have been using it.
Yeah, very good. And what would be the brass? So say if it's a small business who are looking now to put in place an employee assistance program, where would you start in terms of what are the I don't want to say the free or the cheaper stuff, but what are the different sort of levels that you think?
Well, it's not as expensive as you think it is. I think we got a full-on EAP system at the time. Now I think it probably is depending on how many people you have. I think it was €10,000 a year, which really, when you look at the benefit, because HR sometimes are expected to be the counsellors of the organisation, and we're not able to do that. There's a certain point where we have to stop. And the same for managers. And what I love about EAPs is they will help you as a manager if you're struggling with management stuff. So we use it a lot. And every letter we write, every meeting we have, we'll always talk about the EAP, and we can tell people about the successes. Obviously people tell us in confidence the success they've had with it, but we then say, listen, people have told us. And we also circulated a letter about 2 years ago. A guy had some serious mental health difficulties. He wrote me an anonymous letter that he said he'd love me to publish, telling people about the benefits he had from talking to us in HR, using the AP, sharing the situation with his manager, and the difference that made. And that was so powerful, to be able to send around a first-hand account of somebody who used the EAP. So and now for Corona, I couldn't recommend it highly enough. We put it into every town hall. We remind people all the time, because it's something that you'll forget about if you don't talk about it,
of course.
consistently.
Yeah, very good. And just if we, because I know, and I really enjoy reading some of your material and some of the
Thank
content
you.
you have. And I know some of the areas, you talk a lot about sort of productivity, and
Mm.
that ranges. So it could have like software developers, or it could be accountants. Again, maybe looking at, I guess we talk maybe sort of pre-COVID,
Yeah.
when the business as usual. What are the factors you think from maybe a HR professional's perspective, or even when you're guiding, a hiring manager,
Mm.
who's at point A, they might be achieving average results. What are the general sort of tips? I know it's quite a big question, but
It
what are the things
is.
that what are the things that you focus on?
Well, you know what? It's simple and it's complex. Okay, so I've written so many notes. It's sort of one of my favorite subjects, actually, is motivation, and I think productivity is an output of that. So I don't tend to focus too much on productivity because that
Okay.
happens when you figure out the motivation, And really, there's one word, and it's purpose. If you can put purpose into your team, you don't have to worry about anything else, really. So it's simple in that way. But then if you want to expand on that, and I mean, I read an awful lot about this, and I have a lot of kind of management gurus that I love, and Daniel Pink is one of them. And he has 3 words: mastery, autonomy, and purpose. So again,
Okay.
as a leader, I make sure that that is in my team in every single area. And I think you can motivate somebody as junior doing the most boring job, and as senior with those 3 concepts. I used to work in retail, and this is a story I tell a lot, but I think it shows you how you can motivate somebody who's doing anything. And what I always used to ask people what they did there. And one thing that used to bother me was people who say, I'm just that. So I just work on the till, or I'm just the cleaner. So first of all, that is a big no-no for me. And I was like, what do you mean you just work on the till? You mean you're the last person that gets an opportunity to talk to our customer and reassure them about the wonderful product they bought, and reassure them about the service they'll get if they need to bring it back, and tell them to have a lovely day and have a laugh with them, and let them leave the store feeling great about themselves and having had a bit of crack with you. That's what you mean. You're just a cashier. And literally, like, their eyes would kind of light up and go, I never thought of it like that. And I'm like, well, start thinking of it like that, because that's what
Yeah.
you do. Same for the cleaners. Like, you clean our toilets. Thank you so much for cleaning our toilets. So for me, if you can do it, you can do it at any level. You can make any job. You can put purpose in it. And if you can't, maybe you need to look at yourself and think about the purpose. So that moves on to my next point very nicely. I think managers don't look enough at themselves. I think they're always looking at the employees. And for me, you turn it around and you start looking at yourself. If you can't put purpose in your people, then it means you don't have purpose. Why don't you have purpose? What are you doing with your life? Why are you doing this job? And sort of use the 5 whys even to get really deep down into why are we doing this? And so that really would be my number one. If you want a quick
Very good.
guide
Very
of
good.
motivation, I think purpose is the one word.
Yeah. And how, just in relation then to, I guess, ongoing, keeping the on point and on track in relation to that, do you guys have sort of quarterly discussions? Is it a sort of a weekly intranet message? Stephanie, what's been your sort of, what's worked well for you guys in the past in terms of keeping consistency? Because I know you guys are an international business now. You've I know obviously there's been like a lot of businesses they grow, there's been different sort of investors here and there. How have you managed to keep that consistent?
That's difficult, and I would say we haven't. I think when you're growing so fast, getting people to talk about purpose is an up and down kind of thing. Right. So I tell you the way I would look at it, and this I think is a good advice for any manager. When I started in Retail inMotion, I wanted to fix the world. I wanted to change the world. I thought I could fix everybody, fix everything, and you can't. And that's just the way to get stressed and to lose your own light and your own purpose. So what I started focusing on was my area and making sure that my area was the best it could possibly be, that I have the best team, that they're motivated with my purpose. Okay, the business didn't have a vision, and people said to me, well, I can't create the vision for my team until the business has a vision. No, absolutely not. Of course you can. I can create a vision for my department that is not completely out of line with it. I mean, how far can you go wrong with a vision for a team that's supposed to do ABC? You can't go too far wrong. So what I did was I started with my area, and that helped, because as I did that, it grows out. It's like that whole, circle of concern, circle of influence idea. When you focus on what you can control, that circle gets bigger and bigger, and that's what happened in reality. So we do Great Place to Work, and my team scored really highly on Great Place to Work. So therefore people start listening to me. So, it helps when you just focus on what you can do. instead of worrying about, and I do see that a lot of managers, particularly the more
Mm.
junior managers, they spend a lot of time worrying about what everybody else is doing. They spend a
Yeah.
lot of time worrying about, well, the CEO isn't doing that.
Mm.
Well, do you want success in your team? Okay,
Mm.
well then, let's focus on what you can do to create success in your team. So to answer your question, I would say, no, there's not consistency, but it's getting there.
Yeah.
We've had a difficulty with the whole review process thing, because when I joined Retail inMotion 7 years ago, they didn't have any. And then
Yeah.
we started trying to introduce it, and it was a really difficult thing to introduce. It was like getting it into the whole psyche of the business.
Mm.
Because we grow so fast, goalposts were changing all the time.
Yeah.
So just before Corona, again, I keep saying it's like pre-Corona and
Mm.
post-Corona, we discovered OKRs. Now, OKRs for me are an amazing way to keep motivation, productivity,
Yeah.
purpose. And with OKRs, you do the three things that Daniel Pink said. You do the mastery, the autonomy, and the purpose. You can get all three within OKRs. So we launched them pre-COVID,
Yeah.
and they were going quite well, and we're going to
Yeah.
relaunch them again soon.
Yeah, yeah. I think I have that book in my Amazon wish list. I haven't read it yet. Now I said we have sort of hands-on sort of KPIs, which are, key performance indicators, and then we've sort of what we call values and actions, which we find good. Now we've actually, I mean, one of the pieces with the sort of video technology, and there is, and I think a lot of people are sort of feeling their way because, there's very often a lot of companies, there was always someone working remote and they would sort of dial in, but there was usually the core conversation sort of took place. So certainly in our, in my experience, but I do find now, and one of the advantages is when we chat, we've time. It's 4 o'clock in a Friday afternoon. You have to be on time, and do you find there's consistency there with that? And everyone has to be everyone comes along well prepared for it. And I'm sort of drifting here a little bit, but just because we'll move on to the productivity piece, or sorry, to the morale piece now. But we're probably more so than ever with we're in more control of our time, I think, well, certainly than I've ever been, because whenever in the office, when I enjoy that side, the coach and the chatting side, but it's the questions are inevitable. The phone rings and it's, you're not in control of when the phone's going to ring. Whereas when you're working remotely, you really can manage your time. So so I say to the guys, look, because there's quite a few of them into running and cycling and stuff, I say, look, if you want to start, whatever time you want to start at, and it's a beautiful day outside and you want to take 3 hours for lunch and go for a run, not knock yourself out to do that, as long as they're available to do the work. So I think there is, it's obviously a very challenging environment because there's uncertainty, but I think that side of it, I think that probably links into the OKRs thing in terms of the focusing on outcomes as well as the habits along the way.
But also, I mean, we did do the yearly appraisals. It was difficult to pin people down the first couple of years. Last year was actually, I did notice last year we did a lot of work with our managers. So for the first sort of 2-3 years, we were so busy growing and figuring out how to do what we were doing that we didn't put the focus on the managers. And then I said, look, we've got a vacuum here of people that we've promoted and bless them. We've done nothing with them. So the last couple of years, we put in a massive management program using an external coach, using, I do kind of monthly management sessions where we pick a topic and we get really into that topic. So we really put effort into them. And I have to say, last year's appraisals were at a different level. The quality of them and the quality of the conversations, still once a year isn't enough for me. So, I mean, most of them do, the weekly chats, the monthly catch-ups, but not in a recorded way. So I do agree with you. I think now that we're working at home, this stuff can be scheduled so much easier and it'll happen. Because we're not getting the interruptions in the office, the desk rocks, the dramas, Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And tell me, just on the sort of the say morale side of things. So, you spoke a bit about productivity, in relation to sort of the hiring managers. We spoke a little bit about, sometimes it's good to look in the mirror as much as we may or may not like to sort of hear it, but. If you were sort of overseeing a team, or there is a team basically whereby, and the hiring manager is doing her best in relation to, getting as much as she can from the team, from her, obviously wants to enjoy the position herself, but there's attrition, the work habits aren't good, feedback. What are the small, or where would you start in relation to that morale piece? And, and maybe this comes back to purpose, but.
So another area that I'm fascinated by is the area of high-performing teams. So what we did last year, and it went really well, was we had a team in the company that was struggling for many, many reasons. It wasn't all about the team, it was quite complex. And what we decided to do as a leadership team within that area was focus on them completely. So I did the kind of, obviously, the HR stuff, the high performing team stuff. The manager himself, there was a new manager, he was all about team. So, you know, and in French, the manager was everything. We did a fishbone analysis at the end, and like there was so much that came back to the fact that we had the right manager there. It made a huge difference. So really, we put our full focus on that team, and using KPIs, we could see how they went from the worst performing team in the business to nearly the best performing in a very short space of time, because there was focus, there was acknowledgement of what was happening in the team. Those sessions I did with them gave them a space to talk about what was happening on the team, but I'm a coach, so it's all like, okay, so we've acknowledged it now. What are we doing about it? What's your plan? What are you taking? Are you going to take responsibility for your part of it? So between us all, it was definitely teamwork. We focused and we turned it around. So we use that model then for other teams.
And just building that trust, Stephanie, then how did you find that it came straight away, or did you find maybe having conversations individually first, or how was it an open forum that you felt that people felt comfortable discussing what the challenges were?
The first thing was I was meeting the manager at the time every single week and agreeing with him actions that we would do every week, you know. So he had a few poor performers on the team, which was bothering other team members, and that's one of the notes I've made here for motivation. You know, one of our jobs as a manager is to get rid of all of the noise, and poor performers create a lot of noise. And unfortunately, there's not a huge appetite, and particularly in the IT world, I find the appetite for managing poor performers, and I don't mean aggressively managing them. I mean, you know, the two key concepts of coaching: creating awareness and creating responsibility. If you do those two things with people on your team, performance will either go up or they'll say, I can't be bothered, I'll go somewhere else, you know. So he did that very, very quickly with a couple of team members. Then you could see all the boats started rising. I think because they could see the speed of how things were improving, it gave them the appetite to keep going. But also when I started doing the team sessions with them, I was blown away. They were a great team, a great bunch of individuals, absolutely great, lovely people, heart in the right place. But there'd been a number of things that needed to change, like the direction, the purpose. The purpose was missing. The empowerment. I mean, again, all that Daniel Pink stuff, you know, mastery, autonomy. So somebody comes in and starts doing your job for you. It's the quickest way to turn you off that day and demotivate you that day. If somebody, you know, starts stamping in all over your work and telling you how to do something or micromanaging you. And this guy who manages that team is a coach. So instead of telling them how to do things, he coached them. So it was a great test. And again, we had that all ready to apply to other teams when Corona hit.
Brilliant. You know, that's fascinating. And it, like a sort of a tough way of saying it, you sort of get what you tolerate from a team perspective. But I think it's I suppose it's that decisiveness, you know, and it's clear communication and outlining what the standard for performance is. Just on the coaching side, if someone was sort of early in their, you know, their development from a leadership perspective, any particular books that jump out? I'm halfway through the John Whitmore book, Coaching for Performance.
That's fantastic.
So he's quite a big fan of the GROW model, which is sort of the, you know, the goal, reality, options, and then sort of the way forward.
Way forward. Gosh, there's quite a lot, but I have to think. I'm an avid reader, I'm afraid. So pulling a book out of the air is difficult for me. But the John Whitmore one was my first proper coaching book. I just finished a diploma in coaching, and John Whitmore was our first book.
Oh, fantastic.
So, very good. And I absolutely loved it. Coaching for me just makes sense. Just total sense, you know?
Absolutely.
You get so much more out of people when you coach them than when you tell them or direct them.
And I mean, look, it's interesting, right? Because and this is like we're very lucky, I think, in Ireland, because we've such a diverse mixture of companies that exist. Like I would say, sort of a sweeping generalization, 5 or 10 years ago, Irish PLCs by their nature were sometimes quite autocratic in terms of how they were run. Very high standards in relation to the head office from a finance perspective, but I definitely see that coaching model come in more. And I often ask when I'm chatting to people, you know, about people they've worked for in the past that they've really enjoyed working for, because they're generally great companies for us to work with. And and I'm not saying it's all the same names, because it's not, you know, that there's hundreds, probably thousands of really good leaders out there, but it's very hard to beat a really talented finance director, CFO, financial controller, you know, head of marketing or head of HR, who is really passionate about that, you know, and you know, people will join the company, but they'll stay, and you know, they'll give 100%. So I think that sort of coaching model is really
Totally.
you know, it's really fruitful. Yeah,
It is. It really is. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you know, as a leader, you need people who want to follow you. And if you're an autocratic leader or a robot, I'm really into, again, human leadership. Nobody wants to follow
Yeah,
a robot, you know?
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's that kind of human leadership, that being able to be vulnerable, but also providing the
Of course.
calm, the direction, the vision, but also being able to say to your team, you know, today's a bit of a rough day, and where they for, I mean, it needs to be very occasional as a leader, but
Yeah,
you know, to be able to have that vulnerability. And I was doing a session this morning with some managers, and we were talking about fun. And I don't know if you know Sean Aker. I absolutely love him. He's
right.
got 2 books, and he's got, if you look up his TED Talk
Okay.
is brilliant. So he's a researcher around happiness.
Yeah.
But how happiness and productivity come together. And I have to say, as a leader, you've got to inject fun into the workday. I want people to come in and just really, really want to have the crack with me, brainstorm, let's create some great stuff, let's get it out there, let's have some fun doing it. You know, as HR people, we've got to do some really tough stuff at the moment, so it's nice having a team where you can go onto your little Zoom chat and, you know, just work each other through it, and then have fun and have a laugh, and then go back out and do what you got to do again. So I think as well, for leaders, not to underestimate how much morale and motivation comes from simple fun.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Brilliant.
So it is quite simple. It's also quite
Yeah.
complex, this whole motivation thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So Stephanie, I could literally chat to you for hours. We found that we try and invite people along, and if we go out to that, other people won't come on because, geez, you know. So we try to manage the sort of the time on it. Anything else we've missed, or anything you feel would be really useful to share at the moment in terms of personal experiences, just in relation to, I guess, you know, COVID-19 in the future, maybe for people who are in, whether it's a job seeker or someone who's managing a team and sort of really wants to do the best. Anything you think we've missed in our discussion so
far? I think one thing, and this has come up a little bit for us, the productivity at home. Some managers are struggling with that. So I would say 3 things on that subject. Number 1, if you can't trust the person to work at home, you might have hired the wrong person. Number 2, maybe you've got trust issues and you've got to work on yourself. Like I said earlier, maybe it's looking in the mirror. Or number 3, you're not using all the motivational purpose stuff, all those tools, those tricks and techniques that you could have in your toolkit.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's a topic that keeps coming up, but we're not getting stuck into it. People seem to be scared to say, I'm not getting the productivity I need, but I think we need to acknowledge it and then do one of those 3 things. Have you got the right person? Are you leading the right way? Or are there just a bunch of tools and techniques you haven't tried yet?
Yeah.
Because you're trying to work the way you've always worked in a completely different world, in a completely different situation. So maybe there's some agility needed there, you know?
Yeah. And just finally, do you have any sort of tips? Because I think, you know, sometimes when you walk out of the office and you're finished work and you're on the way home and it's like your work day is dusted, whereas at the moment sometimes maybe there is that gap. I will put you on the spot. Are you going to turn the laptop off and then, you know, adjusting your personal life, or any sort of tips on that subject?
I am and I amn't. Normally I am. So Corona's in some ways been good for me because I wanted less travel, as in, you know, back and forth to Germany, and I wanted, the commute drives me crazy. I have quite a long commute. So I got both those things. But the last couple of weeks have been very tough, and I haven't got a place where I can decompress from walking from my study to my kitchen. You walk into the kitchen and everybody's got 20 questions, and my father and my stepmother are living here as well. And it's been very difficult to say, guys, I have literally just stepped off a really tough call. Can you all just give me a second? You know, I'm finding that tough. And actually, yesterday I started verbalizing that, and that was brilliant. So I think we need to get better at saying, okay, it's really tough in that little study. You might think I'm just playing games all day. I'm not. So yeah, I would say to all the people who are listening, who are finding it tough to decompress, maybe just say it. That, you know, normally I've got an hour in the car to sing, to listen to a podcast, to do something that lets me come down gradually, and I can't now. And you're expecting me to turn into mom and wife and daughter when I walk out. And I'm still in my head in the difficult conversation I've just had.
Yeah, fair
So,
enough. Yeah.
yeah, I would say just use your words and tell them,
Yeah.
I'm just going to go to the garden for 10 minutes. Just
Yeah, of course.
you know.
Yeah. Or put the earbuds in and pretend you're on a call. Maybe that's yeah.
I'll try that one. That's a good one.
Yeah. So Stephanie, thanks a million for your time, because I know it's been a very busy week. You're going to hold on there for a moment. I'm just going to pause the recording.
Okay.